Thank you for joining us today for the Conform to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. I'm Jay Jones. I'm here with George Mays. It's Text Driven Tuesday. Grab your Bible. Everyone's favorite controversial passage.
Here we are. Yeah.
Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 8.
Mm-hmm.
And you started by saying, this is a weird text.
This is a weird text.
I thought that maybe that's a weird opener.
Yeah. This is one of those texts that I didn't want to spend a lot of time on, like some kind of attention-grabbing opener, because the text itself is, I mean, I already knew that people have been anticipating this passage, so I just wanted to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people have been talking about this. I had a sneaking suspicion that this was the reason why some people wanted me to preach the entire book of Genesis, which was just for this passage.
Maybe it was.
Yeah. So I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time, but I think it's okay for us to say there's weird things in the Bible. There's texts in the Bible that are strange.
Well, I mean, I would say someone rising from the dead's pretty weird.
That's pretty weird. Yeah.
Pretty supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But not just the supernatural element of it. I mean, what we're talking about it's got weird stuff in it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's debatable. I mean, there's so many people that debate it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think it's all right for us to come to the text and say, well, this is a weird one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And there's a lot of stuff that's disputed throughout this whole passage.
Yeah.
You sent me a whole list.
Yeah.
I sent you over a note. I was like, hey, I got 6 and 7, got some disputed stuff in here. And you were like, don't talk to me about disputed.
Don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me about disputed things.
Leave your Romans disputed stuff to yourself. Well, when this is the Sons of God Nephilim passage, and that's what everyone focuses on. And as I started reading it, I was like, oh no, there's a lot more in here. There's a lot more in here than just Nephilim.
Yeah.
So we had to deal with a bunch of,
there was like 6 things.
Of stuff. Yeah. There's like 5 or 6 things. Yeah.
But with all of the disputed things, you really wanted people to take away some indisputable truths.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's your outline.
Yeah.
It's 3 indisputable truths.
Well, you sit there at the, beginning of the week, and you're looking at the passage, you're trying to figure out, all right, how do I preach this? And everyone's always interested in the sons of God and the Nephilim. And we're going to talk about it. It's fun. I mean, I've had conversation after conversation with people over this passage over the last, 6 months at least, leading up to this. And that's fun. We can have fun conversations about it. But as I was thinking about how to preach this, I was thinking, this is kind of an out. You can come and sit in a sermon and hear about, giants, and it doesn't require anything from you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could come and be entertained and leave, and it doesn't demand you do anything. Like, I'm not going to be telling people, like, go buy magic beans. So I wanted to get at what's actually going on here, because a sinner will find ways to avoid what the text is demanding of them. And I didn't want people to just leave here with conspiracy theories and thinking, well, that was a weird one. There's some interesting things in there, but no conviction, no conviction of sin, no call to repent, no call to trust in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a Sunday morning. There's unbelievers sitting in those pews. What are they going to get out of this?
Right.
So I wanted to deal with the text and try to explain the text, but I also wanted to get behind all of the weirdness and the disputed stuff and get to what's really clear. And so hopefully that's what I was able to do.
Yeah, good. All right. So 3 indisputable truths in one of the Bible's most disputed passages. That's what we got today.
That's it.
Well, let's read it.
Okay. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then Yahweh said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who are of old, the men of renown. Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And Yahweh regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So Yahweh said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh.
All right. Well, let's jump in. First, indisputable truth. Man is hopelessly lost in sin. You had referenced that this is a hinge passage. Want to explain that?
Well, it's obviously introducing the flood, and so the flood story is going to take us through chapter 9. And this is the reason why we're dividing the sermons the way that they are. So you're preaching Romans. You're getting back into Romans next week. We're done with Genesis for a little bit, even though we're coming to the flood. It references it in verse 7. But if we remember that the book of Genesis is divided by these toledotes, we are in a toledot section. It began last week in chapter 5, verse 1. And so this is...
Which means, for reminders...
generations.
These are the generations.
These are the generations of yeah. And so we have the generations of Adam, and then we have the genealogy of Seth. And this is the close of that. So this is attached to that section. And verse 9 of chapter 6 is the next toledot section. So these are the generations of Noah, right? And so that's why I'm dividing the preaching rotation the way that I did, is because that's how the book itself is divided. And so this is connected to this genealogy, but it also introduces the flood. Yeah. So it's serving as this hinge. It's a transition passage, and so it's always important for us to keep in mind where we are in the context, that this is connected to the genealogies. Whichever position you go with, there's arguments to be made for its placement here, but it's not sitting in a vacuum. It's not just some random text that Moses just placed here accidentally. It's doing something.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we're going to get to this indisputable truth. Man is hopelessly lost in sin, but working to that, we got to work through some of the stranger things in this passage.
Is that trademarked by Netflix?
Maybe.
Are we going to get
Fringe? That's another one.
That's another one. Yeah.
And the first one maybe that comes up is, what was the earth like in this time period?
Right. Yeah.
Like, how many people were actually around when the flood arrived?
Yeah. I mean, what do you think? Like we both grew up in church background, so we've heard the story of Noah and the ark. What's always been kind of your thought about the population?
I'm trying to think back, like education stuff. Like if I just read, I'm just reading. I kind of believed at this time the entire earth was like one continent.
Okay, yeah.
And there were not near as many people on the earth as there is today.
Right.
That's kind of, I think, how
They're
I
kind
would
of scattered, like
Yeah.
like maybe villages.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's kind of how I thought about it too. Now one continent, I can get behind that.
Okay.
Pangea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, because I think the flood
Oh yeah, I'm a
Bur-
yeah.
destroyed
Yeah, I
the
think
world
so.
as we know it.
Right. Yeah. Um, well, verse 1 tells us when man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them. So that connects us back to the genealogy. So throughout Seth's genealogy, we're told this person was this old and had this son, and then they had other sons and daughters, and then they lived this long, and then they died. And so we have 10 generations. So that connects us here. That's why when man, or the word is Adam, when Adam began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them. So we're connected to that. I asked ChatGPT, right, to do some math for me because we both know I'm not going to do that math. I said let's assume that these are the only people that lived. Let's assume no gaps, right? And that's what I argued for last week in chapter 5, and asked it. Let's assume that they only had 10 kids. How many people would? Because this was about roughly 1,700 years. If we just take Genesis 5 at face value, from Adam to Noah, about 1,700 years. There's a higher birth rate. There's a lower mortality rate. What would the population be? And it spat out about 27,000. But then it said, but the population will change dramatically with the more kids that they have. So exponentially, it will grow. So if they have 15, it said that if they only had 15 kids with high birth rate, low mortality, there could be tens to hundreds of millions of people on the earth.
I think
now, if we're thinking they lived, around 900 years, let's even say that they didn't start having kids until later because they live longer, so their development is different than ours. And let's say they didn't start having kids until they were 200, and let's say maybe the last 200 years they weren't having kids. You still have like 500 years to have kids. Even if they had a kid every 10 years, that's a lot of kids. And so it's possible, we don't know, it's possible that the population at the time of the flood was even greater than what we have today. And that's wild to think that there might have been billions of people on the planet.
Yeah.
But it's possible within 1,700 years, with people living this long, it's possible to have that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it was telling me that as people live shorter lives, the birth rate goes up. And so there could even be more people. It's wild.
Yeah.
But that's not what we usually think. We don't usually think that. And so we could speculate about all kinds of things, like what kind of world would this have been? We're talking cities, probably massive cities. Technology, who knows?
Yeah.
What forms of government would they have had? They probably would have already been dividing into nations and kingdoms. We just don't think along those lines.
Right.
We think that there's, several tens of thousands of people, and they're just kind of living spread out. But
who's that guy, that archaeologist? You seen that? It's on Netflix. Was it Ancient Civilization or something? Have you seen that? He's kind of a fringe archaeologist where he's like,
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't watched it.
There was a great cataclysm, but before this great cataclysm, which occurred, I think he says like 12,000 years ago, the technology and the population covered the earth, and I have all this evidence, and he goes to all these places to show. Have
Yeah.
you never seen that? Graham Hancock, I think is his name.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe the Bible already
Right.
talks about a cataclysm and pre-cataclysm there being a ancient civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he attributes it to like a rapid onset of an ice age
Okay.
as a polar shift,
Hmm.
which
can all be explained by a flood.
Yeah. So, all right. So the next one we come to then is these sons of God. So who are these sons of God coming into the daughters of men? You said there's 3 positions.
Well,
So-
there's more than 3, but
Well, what's the main one? We'll go with the main positions.
you don't want to talk about the alien view?
Oh, you can bring it
No, we
up.
don't. I don't have to talk about aliens.
Well, that's Graham Hancock.
Okay. Yeah.
It's that ancient
Mhm.
aliens
Right.
had given technology
Right.
to men pre-cataclysm.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of sounds like the Book of Enoch to me.
It does sound like the book of First Enoch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 3 views. So the sons of God are they see that the daughters of men are attractive, or the Hebrews says that they're good, and so they take as wives any that they want. Right. So there's 3 views of the sons of God. Which one do you want to talk about first?
We'll just go in the order that you did.
That I did? Okay.
We'll
So
go backwards.
I
maybe.
went. I flipped it because everyone that I listened to several sermons, and they always would put their position at the end.
Yeah.
I wanted to switch it up.
Okay. All right.
But
Well, just do what you did.
just to
Do what
keep
you
just
did
to
in the
keep
sermon.
people listening.
Yeah, do what you did in the sermon, and then we'll come back to it and explain why you believe it.
Okay. So the first position is the fallen angel view. So in this position, the sons of God are angels who left heaven, and they took on some kind of human form and married women and had children with them. This position is the oldest, and it was also the majority view of the Jews of the first century and the early church. And so you've got the Septuagint talks about angels. So does Dead Sea Scrolls. And you've got Philo, Josephus, and then all these church fathers, Tertullian, Justin Martyr. Like I've got like 20 pages of quotes from early church fathers with this position. It's still held by a lot of people today. The second view is the evil rulers view, or dynastic rulers is what it's usually called. In this position, the sons of God are kings, which has it has some connection with ancient Near East, where kings were often considered to be sons of the gods.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was considered to be a god. Nebuchadnezzar, like these guys, they thought that they were, if not gods themselves, they were at least sons of the gods. And so in this position, the sons of God are these kings. You can think of Lamech back in chapter 4. He takes 2 wives. He's probably king of the city that Cain built, and he's violent. And so you've got these wicked kings who are collecting women for harems, right? And they're not good kings, like they're wicked kings. A kind of a trying to synthesize the fallen angel and the king view is the view that these kings were demon possessed. So at some point, the fallen angels, they possessed these kings. John MacArthur holds to that. That's John MacArthur's view. The third view is commonly called the Sethite view. And in this view, and this has this connection to the genealogies of Cain and Seth in 4 and 5. The sons of God are the godly line of Seth, and the daughters of men are the line of Cain. And so the sin is that they're intermarrying. So you can think of believers and unbelievers.
Hmm.
What was his name? Bodhi Hodge. Yeah, Bodhi Hodge, who is at Answers in Genesis. He's got an article, you can go look at it, in Answers in Genesis, where he expands that it's not just the line of Seth or the line of Cain, it's just godly men and ungodly women.
Okay.
And so the sin is intermarriage. And so as they intermarry, the godly line is influenced away from worshiping Yahweh. So those are and that's the that view started around Augustine, and that was like the majority view for most of church history from Augustine down through the Reformation. And so Luther held to it, Calvin held to it, Matthew Henry, John Gill, down to, I mean, I think it's the majority Reform view now. R.C. Sproul held to it. Kevin DeYoung, I read a sermon that Kevin DeYoung preached on this passage, and he argues for the Sethite view. Reformation Study Bible takes it. So that's probably, in our circles, the Sethite view is probably going to be the major one.
Right. Okay.
So those are the three main views.
All right. So, who are the Nephilim? That's the next question.
You read it, and Nephilim's not even a translation. It's just a Hebrew word.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know how to translate it.
Right.
What is this? It's been suggested that it's connected to the Hebrew word nephal, which is to fall, or we could translate it as the fallen ones. But the Septuagint again, the Latin Vulgate, and then the King James and New King James following that translation translates it as giants.
Mm.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
So there's giants,
Yeah.
which isn't that shouldn't be as controversial, because there obviously are giants in the Old Testament.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Goliath is not just a tall guy; he's a giant,
Right.
and he's got brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And you read about David's mighty men, and they fight giants.
Right.
This isn't even the last time we'll talk about giants in the book of Genesis. They show up again in chapter 14.
Uh-huh.
So there's giants. Now the question is, where'd they come from? So in the fallen angel view, the Nephilim could be the offspring of the angels and humans.
Mm-hmm.
So we could think of like mythology, Zeus and his son Hercules, who was a demigod.
Mm-hmm.
Gilgamesh was thought of as part god, part man. So that could be the case. That could be the offspring of angels and humans.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of a half breed type creature. The next line says that these were the mighty men who are of old, the men of renown. Gabora, which is a term that's used of a lot of guys in the Old Testament. Boaz was called a Gaborim. These could simply be the offspring of kings. They could be just mighty warriors. They're men of renown, men of name.
Uh-huh.
That's what they're called. So they could just be warriors, like powerful warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Even within the fallen angel view, there are people that think that the Nephilim are not connected to the sons of God. So they're two separate entities.
Huh.
No matter what position you take, you still have to deal with where did the Nephilim come from.
Yeah.
So they were in these days. They were in the days of the flood, and also afterward, and that's a difficulty also. So every position has to ask, where did they come from? And it's difficult. I mean, there's no really easy answers for it. But they do show up one other time in the Old Testament in Numbers chapter 13, when Moses sends the 12 spies to spy out the promised land. 10 of them come back and give a bad report.
Right.
And in that report, they say, we saw the Nephilim, and they're giant. Like that, they talk about them as giants. We seem like grasshoppers to them. It says, and what's interesting is in that passage, it says that the land devours its inhabitants. And I think we can just kind of gloss over that and not even think about what's he talking, like, what are the spies talking about? It says the land through which we have gone to spy it out is the land that devours its inhabitants. And the people that we saw in it are of great height. And we also saw the Nephilim. What does that mean? The land devours its inhabitants. Well, it has been suggested, and I think it's at least a probability that there's giants in the land and they're cannibals. I think that's what it means. The land devours its inhabitants.
Right.
There's giants and they eat people.
Right.
And this shouldn't be far-fetched, because even in the Americas, when Europeans came over here, many of the natives were cannibals. Like this is not a far-fetched idea for there to be giants who are eating people.
Right. Because
even regular-sized people would often kill and eat their enemies. And this is interesting because you have giant legends all around the world, and this is not just a Middle Eastern thing.
And they eat people.
Yeah, I mean, think of fairy tales that have giants. What's so terrifying about giants? They eat people. So where did all these legends come from? Because it's not just Middle East. There's Asian giants, there's African giants, there's European giants,
and there's American.
There's American giants. Yeah, there's legends from the Native American tribes here.
There's multiple.
They fought giants.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's multiple historical accounts of the early settlers encountering Native Americans and being warned, don't go to this valley or this area. There's giants there. Right. We had a major war with them.
Right.
They eat people.
Yeah. Where'd they come from?
Right.
Where'd they come from? They could be the offspring of angels. If they're not, then we have to ask where'd they come from. And so that's where the argument is. Are they, and the grammar could go either way, that whether they're connected to the sons of God and the daughters of men, or they could be separate. If they're connected, then if you reject the fallen angel view, you do have to ask the question, why would the line of Seth intermarrying with the daughters of Cain, why would they produce giants?
Right.
Same with the king's view. If they're not connected, if there's no connection between them, and Moses is just saying at the same time that the sons of God are doing this, the Nephilim are in the land, you still are left with the question, where'd the Nephilim come from? So it's a difficulty no matter which position you take. There's not one position that you're like, all right, that clears up everything. There's still questions no matter what position you take.
Yeah. I think one good, we'll get to your position and we'll talk about why you hold the position, but seeing the Nephilim as an offspring of fallen angels is that when Israel goes to conquer the land, God tells them there are specific tribes, and they're to completely eradicate them,
right,
including even their children.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that with every tribe.
Right. And I think that's overlooked also. Yes. And that's a criticism against the Old Testament, is God just tells Israel to just wipe out everyone.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
And he doesn't.
It's only specific ones, and it seems to be the ones that have the lines of the Nephilim.
Of giants, yeah. They're giants, yeah. That there's a theme throughout the Old and the New Testament of giants, of God's people eradicating them.
Right.
And it's a really strange theme. Joshua is supposed to go in, and there's the the nations that they're supposed to just completely wipe out are the ones that have giants.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, of course.
They're also engaged in cannibalism and
Right.
child sacrifice and
Right.
bestiality
Mm-hmm.
and all kinds of abominable things.
Right. Saul, when he's told to wipe out the Amalekites, they've got giants. They're a giant tribe. The Philistines have giants. Where'd they come from? David's mighty men, we've already talked about it. David's mighty men are killing giants.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a book called Is God a Moral Monster? Because this is one of the things that is often used by unbelievers, atheists, to say, God, look at what your God did in the Old Testament. He condoned the killing of children. But when you understand, like, what is really, I think, being strongly implied is that these are tribes of giants.
Mm-hmm.
They're cannibals. They engage in bestiality
Right.
and cannibalism.
And
These are not
like wicked sorcery and witchcraft and all the strange religious practices.
right.
Yeah.
So what you have then in that sense is God actually protecting the human line
Mm-hmm.
by destroying a corruption.
Right.
Yeah, because he doesn't say that about every tribe.
Right.
So I think it's a good argument.
Yeah.
That fits well. But give us the reasons why you hold to the fallen angel view.
Okay. Yeah, I hold to the fallen angel view. It's weird. I still have questions. But there's some arguments I think that are in its favor.
Mm-hmm.
The first is the immediate context. Yes, it's connected to the genealogy, so there is an argument for the Sethite view there. However, when you get to verse 1 and 2, it says when man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them. So I think that that's humanity in general. Adam is just the word for man. So when humanity is multiplying and daughters are born to them, then in verse 2, the sons of God and the daughters of man are the sons of God. They see the daughters of man, that they're attractive, and they take some to be their wives. There's a contrast between sons of God and daughters of man. And the Sethite view requires that verse 1 and 2, the word man be interpreted two different ways. So it has to be humanity as a whole in verse 1, and then man has to be the line of Cain in verse 2. And sons of God have to be the line of Seth. And hermeneutically, you wouldn't do that any place else. If a word changes its meaning right next to each other, there has to be some kind of explanation. There's confusion there.
Mm.
So I think that there's this contrast between sons of God and daughters of men. Also, the sons of God, if they're kings, there's not really any phrase like that in the Old Testament, and it would just come out of nowhere. You'd have to assume the king view for sons of God to make sense, because you haven't had that theme anywhere else. So it just kind of lands in your lap. And the second is that without exception, the exact phrase "sons of God" is used exclusively for angels. So you can think of Job
in the Old Testament.
In the Old Testament, yeah. So you think of Job, Job 1, Job 2, Job 38. The sons of God present themselves to Yahweh, and it seems really clear that they're angels. Similar phrase in Daniel chapter 3, in Aramaic, that when Nebuchadnezzar throws Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fiery furnace, and there's a fourth figure, and Nebuchadnezzar says it looks like the son of a god, son of God, and it's probably the angel of the Lord, right? There's some other places where it's very close. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8, talks about sons of God. The Septuagint just translates it as angels. There's places in Psalms where you get kind of the same idea. So just consistently, there is the idea that Israel is God's son. And Luke picks up on the fact that Adam is God's son. But the exact phrase, the sons of God, is only used of angels in the Old Testament. And I think that's an important feature for us to think about. How does the rest of the Bible use this phrase? Third, I think it fits into the biblical storyline. So you've got the seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15 and the seed of the serpent. Again, we don't want to equivocate on what words mean in their immediate context. So the seed of the woman is the biological offspring of Eve. We know that Jesus is the biological offspring of the woman. Well, when we talk about the seed of the serpent, people usually just think of it as spiritual. But that's an equivocation. Like, you've got a biological seed, but you've got a spiritual seed, but there's nothing in the text that requires that. So if there's a biological seed of the woman, what makes us immediately say, well, the seed of the serpent has to be spiritual, and there's no biological element to it? I think Genesis 6 would solve that. It would answer that question. Like, there is a biological seed of the serpent also. And it also deals with that conflict of the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. There's this promise given to the serpent, right, that a savior is going to come from a woman. Well, what if the evil angels, in an attempt to hijack that promise, seek to corrupt the seed of the woman so that the seed of the woman can't come? Right. So it fits into the overarching conflict. If in chapter 4, the seed of the serpent tries to kill the seed of the woman, but God's plan isn't foiled in that way. So we have a genealogy of a godly line. So what if now we're going to try to just corrupt the seed so that the Savior can't come, right? But the fourth argument, and this is the one that pushes me into the fallen angel view. If it wasn't for this argument, I probably would lean towards the Sethite view. But there are passages in the New Testament that seem to confirm the fallen angel view. And that's what really pushes me over the edge, because the New Testament is the inspired interpretation of the Old Testament. Yeah. So if Peter and Jude take the fallen angel view, which it seems like they do, then they're authoritative. Right. The argument is over. If the New Testament confirms this view, then Genesis 6 becomes a lot easier. Right. And that's what happens.
And those passages in the New Testament now actually do make more sense. So rather than having to struggle right, to figure out what in the world could this possibly mean, you just take it for what it means, and then now you read the Old Testament in light of what you just read, and it fits together. Yeah.
And I had several people that talked to me yesterday, and they said, well, I'm glad you brought out the big stuff because this doesn't matter. And I push back a little bit because, your ultimately your position on Genesis 6 and the sons of God and the Nephilim, it's not salvific. Like, it's not something that we have to divide over. We can disagree, and we still have to acknowledge their difficulties.
Yeah, it literally affects nothing. I remember 2011 systematic theology class, our professor was like, let's have some fun today. Let's talk about the Nephilim. Yeah. And whatever position you land on, it ultimately is not going to affect any other like major doctrines. Right. And so have at it. Yeah. And the whole class just fought for an hour. Yeah, it was fun.
But the underlying thing that is important is our hermeneutics. How do you deal with a text? How do you understand the Bible? And that is important. If the way that we come to Genesis 6 is not the way that we would come to other passages in the Bible, then that is an issue. And so the scriptures interpret scripture, and the New Testament helps us interpret the Old Testament. And so the way that we come at Genesis 6 tells us what we're going to do with the rest of the Bible. So we don't want to come to Genesis 6 and here's the same word in 2 verses and we're going to change the meaning of it. That's Arminian hermeneutics, Jay. Right? That's gonna have ripple effects somewhere else. You're gonna be arguing with someone over something that does matter, and they're going to have the hermeneutic of Genesis 6. You have to have a consistency in how you translate the Bible, and so that's important. And I've been trying to stress that as we've been going through Genesis, because people have different opinions on creation, the age of the earth, the historicity of Adam, things that do matter.
Mm-hmm.
What does the text say? That's what we have to come down to. Right? What does it say? I thought it was really interesting. There was someone that was talking about they hadn't read the Bible before. They were a newer Christian, and they were just reading the Bible for the first time, and they just thought that sons of God were angels. Like that was just what it sounded like. If you just read it for the first time without any kind of presuppositions, there's no influence. You're just reading it. What does it sound like? What is it? What's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
But the New Testament passages, you've got 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 18 through 20. You've got 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 6. And then you have Jude verses, 5 and 6, 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how much time do you want to spend on this?
Just give us a brief overview. They're all saying the similar things. Just tell us what are they saying?
They connect angels doing something.
Sexual sin.
Well, let's just say angels doing something. Like they're wicked angels.
Yeah.
Right? God, they're angels that deserve judgment.
Mm-hmm.
There is, and it's connected to Noah and the flood, and then it's connected to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look these up in Jude and 2 Peter, and both of them they connect the angels doing something with the flood and Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm. And they're judged.
What is it? Right. So 2 Peter, if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world but preserved Noah, if by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes. We know where the flood is. We know where Noah is in the Bible. We know where Sodom and Gomorrah is. They're both in Genesis. We have angels. We have angels who sinned. What's he referencing? If he's referencing Genesis 6, then we've got a very clear connection in Genesis. We can say, all right, here's Sodom and Gomorrah, here's Noah and the flood, here's the angels. If he's referencing the original fall, which is what the other argument is, he's talking about the angels when they rebelled, whenever that was. We don't have a text for it.
Yeah.
Which would be really interesting if that was the case, because there's no reason for it.
Right.
Especially in 2 Peter, grammatically, you've got the angels and Noah, you've got Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. They're meant to be taken as two parts, right? That's the argument. What the angels do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's connected to the flood, then it's Genesis 6. In Jude, he connects it to the sexual immorality of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's a bit clearer in the Greek than it is in the English, just because I think translators are giving you a little bit of freedom in your interpretation. But it's pretty clear. The angels, they left their proper dwelling, and they've been confined to prison. And Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them likewise committed sexual immorality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, likewise to who? Well, likewise to the angels. So it seems like there's a connection to Genesis chapter 6. And if it's not, then I don't know what he's referencing. Jude also he quotes First Enoch. First Enoch is a Jewish writing from 3rd century BC, I believe, and it takes the fallen angel view in detail.
Right.
So, I read it. You can find this online. I just have an apocrypha with it in there. You don't even have to read the whole book. You just read chapter 6, 7, and 8. There are a group of angels who take on human form, and they intermarry with human women, and they have children who are giants, which is interesting because in First Enoch, the giants are wicked, and they basically enslave humanity. And when humanity can't provide for them, what do the giants do, Jay?
Eat them.
They start eating them, right? Yeah. And there's judgment. There's judgment on these angels, and the angels teach humanity sorcery and astrology and war.
They give them technology.
Technology and all kinds of stuff that increases the sinfulness of humanity. Jude quotes from First Enoch. He doesn't just allude to it. He actually quotes from First Enoch chapter 1. Talking about Enoch, the seventh from Adam, who gives this prophecy about the coming of God with his holy ones to judge the ungodly. If he's quoting from First Enoch, it doesn't mean that he's taking all of First Enoch as historical fact. But if he is quoting First Enoch and he alludes to angels who sinned, and if First Enoch is it is the majority view of the Jews of his day, you would think that he would have to make some kind of qualification if he's not taking the fallen angel view. It would be really weird if he was taking a different view than the book that he quotes from,
right,
without saying anything. So Peter and Jude are authoritative interpreters of Genesis 6, and if to me it seems like it's a very clear-cut case. So with those four, but especially with the New Testament reference, I take the fallen angel view. And I had to throw it in. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, I had to throw it in because it's so weird.
Yeah.
Paul's teaching on head coverings, and he says women should do this in the church because of the angels. And then he just moves on. Yeah. And it has been at least suggested that he's referencing Genesis chapter 6, which raises all kinds of other questions that I don't have answers for.
Right.
It was funny. I listened to R.C. Sproul. He has a video on this, on Genesis 6. And he doesn't talk about Peter or Jude, but he talks about 1 Corinthians 11.
That's funny.
He takes the Sethite view, but he argues against the angel view because from 1 Corinthians 11. It's weird. Like out of the passages that reference it, 1 Corinthians 11 is the least clear of all of those. So certainly can't be dogmatic that Paul's arguing for head coverings because of fallen angels. It's just that's another weird, difficult passage that I don't know. Yeah. So all right. That's why I hold to the fallen angel view.
Okay.
Is there anything else that is convincing to you? Is there anything else that
I think you
causes you to lean that way?
I think you listed the main ones. You know, like I said, for me, whenever I was reading, Is God a Moral Monster book, when I connected those dots, it seemed to make the most sense.
Yeah,
because we really don't see God telling people to kill everyone, including babies, indiscriminately.
Right.
But here we have in one occasion where it is, and oh, surprise.
Yeah, there's giants.
It just so happens
right.
these are tribes of giants. It seems to make perfect sense.
Right. Now, the argument against the fallen angel view is Jesus's words in Matthew chapter 22, where he says that believers in the resurrection will not marry or give in marriage. They'll be like the angels in heaven. And people who are opposed to the fallen angel view, they'll say, look, this is in opposition to what Jesus says. But we have to be really careful about what Jesus says here, because he says that he's not commenting on Genesis 6. He's not talking about angels, really. He's talking about, he's answering the Sadducees.
Right.
And he says that at the resurrection, believers will be like angels in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole point of Jude. Jude says that the angels left their proper position.
Right.
So he's not talking about angels in heaven. Genesis 6 is not talking about angels in heaven. He's talking about angels that left their proper place in heaven to come to earth.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
That's the whole point. The
Right.
point is that this is not natural, that it's unnatural. It's a violation of Genesis 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that is good. it's very, very wicked, very, very bad. Now, I mean, there's all kinds of questions about angel biology and how can they even procreate with humans and stuff like that.
Well, I think, as Peter and Jude will link it to Sodom and Gomorrah and going after strange
flesh, right?
Right. It seems to be a corruption of God's natural order.
Right.
So homosexuality is a corruption of God's natural order,
Mm-hmm.
but it's side by side with what the angels did,
Right.
which is a corruption of God's natural order.
Right.
And so they fit
Right.
in that way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're leaving their proper place.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what they're supposed to be doing. I had a thought last night.
Okay.
Let me just throw this out and see what you think, because we've talked about this before. Why did Satan fall?
Mm-hmm.
And we've tossed around the idea that it's because he thought that he was the most beautiful and most powerful, most important creature.
Mm-hmm.
And then God makes man in his image.
Mm-hmm.
What if, and this is speculation, what if the angels, this group of angels, they were trying to usurp humanity by making their own image? Like they were trying to, they took on the form of people. They're not actually people. And they have children in order to try to reclaim this status as try to be in the image of God.
Yeah.
Or make images of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Possibly.
know.
Yeah.
Speculation. I don't know.
It does when you consider the like remnant or echoes, like, so that you have all of these different civilizations all over the earth, right?
Right.
They all have giant stories, but they all have also something in common. That's that a god taught them technology.
And also, a lot of cultures have these legends of gods coming and having children with women.
Yeah.
That's not just here in Genesis 6. It's not just Roman and Greek culture. There are Asian myths. There's a lot in the Philippines. I did not know that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legends of that in the Philippines, Africa, Europe. The Norse. There are legends of the Norse gods like Odin and Thor,
right,
having children.
The islands
is
in Maui a demigod?
Yeah.
So you have all these cultures spread out over the earth.
Right.
They have a god coming, teaching technology, producing demigods, and these demigods rule as kings too, right?
Yeah.
So the king, like Pharaoh, who would say he was a god,
right.
That's in every culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just so post flood, as God disperses people after Babel, Tower of Babel, they spread out. And
right.
they take these stories, and they create these myths. But the myths are based in one true event.
Right.
That's my belief.
Yeah, I think so. It's a game of telephone. We see it with the flood, and we see it with gods having children with women.
Yeah,
it's like where did this come from? There's this common thread, and you can trace it back to Genesis 6. But Moses is saying,
And interestingly, too, sometimes they're dragons,
right,
which
yeah,
teach people technology.
right, right, yeah. But Moses is saying they're not gods.
Yes.
These are not. It's not like Zeus. This is an imitation. It's a mimic. You don't have to fear the Nephilim. They're going to fight the Nephilim. You don't have to fear them. They're not gods. They're flesh. They don't have superpowers. You can kill them.
Right.
Right. That brings up the other difficulty with the fallen angel view is it says that the Nephilim were in those days and after.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the question of after the flood, what happened? Did angels have children with women again? There's a couple of different arguments to explain the presence of the giants after the flood. Some more convincing than others.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the angels did it again. The same event transpired again, which could be the case. When we get to the Tower of Babel, they're doing pre-flood stuff. Nimrod is described as a giant. He could be a Nephilim. I don't know. Some wacky ones are like the Nephilim clung to the side of the ark and survived. They hid underground, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I probably lean towards this one, is that one of Noah's son's wives carried the genetics, which the culprit would be Ham's wife, because all the giants come from Ham. But I don't know. That's a question that I don't have an answer for.
All right, very good.
So.
Well, I think we have.
But we do have to. I mean,
length.
we have to remember that this world is stranger than what we often give it credit for.
Right.
And we've talked about it numerous times on here, that there's a world behind this world. There's supernatural beings and personalities that they're evil ones, and they want to usurp their rightful place. They want to rebel against God, and they want to destroy humanity in the process.
Right.
And I think this passage fits in with that. Mm-hmm. And I think that we often, maybe even especially in the Reformed world, often treat this world as all there is. And we try to be very logical and rationalistic, and we can become very materialistic. And there's a spiritual world.
Yeah, yeah. So with all of that, that's debatable. There is one clear, undebatable truth, and that is that we shouldn't forget that man is hopelessly lost in sin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's verse 5. Verse 5 is really the key, that Yahweh saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's really the point of this passage, is that mankind, though they've multiplied and filled the earth, though they have, there's these Nephilim who are men of name, they're mighty men, and mankind has, tracing the line of Cain in Genesis 4, they've got all these innovations, build a city, and they're making instruments and farming technology, and their metal work. They're wicked. Mm-hmm. Every intention of the thoughts of their heart is evil continually.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's really a stronger verse on total depravity than that.
What do you think about in the New Testament where Jesus says it would be the same as the days of Noah before his return?
I don't know. I mean, there's going about everyday business, wickedness, violence.
Yeah.
Nephilim? I don't know. Wicked. Mm-hmm. I mean, it will be wicked, but it also will be very earth focused, like just going about life.
I'll give you a pure speculation.
Okay.
All right, pure speculation.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. What if there is a massive psyop to prepare humanity to receive another incursion and a mixing of flesh?
Yeah.
And it goes like this, because we are materialists now, post-enlightenment. We don't accept gods
Right.
and Zeus and things like that. We're not going to repeat that playbook.
Right.
Right.
I don't know.
But what we have
Some people will.
But what we have been prepped for over the past 60 years are aliens.
Aliens, right.
Which are now being called by those who really are in the inner groups, even in people in our governments. Like, so people in our government have been having briefings about aliens. They're no longer calling them aliens.
Yeah.
You know what they're calling them?
Interdimensional beings.
They're
right?
calling them interdimensional beings.
Yeah.
And they're saying we've had contact with interdimensional beings for the past 50 years.
Yeah.
So through stories and movies and TV and whatever, we've been conditioned to accept the reality of these aliens, interdimensional beings. So when they arrive, everybody will go, okay, yeah, whatever.
Right.
And they'll accept them as part of the physical universe.
Yeah.
And then be susceptible.
Then they're like, come be my bride.
And they'll be integrated. That's what and then they'll be fully integrated into society.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll bring advanced technology. They'll bring all these things. And, and we won't accept them as gods.
Right.
But as interdimensional helpers of humanity.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, we can scoff at this stuff. But even if it wasn't an alien, what if a burning one actually showed up and said, "I'll give you enlightenment.
I'll make you live 900 years."
Right. People absolutely would.
Right.
There is at least a suggestion in Genesis 19 that the men of Sodom knew that these were angels. Because remember when Abraham sees them walking up to him, he knows that they're not just, he knows it's God. Like, he knows he's talking to God. That's why he does what he does. I mean, God starts talking to him and promising a child. Is, next year Sarah's going to have a son. He knows who he's talking to. It's suggested that when the two angels go down to Sodom, that it's not just that the men are homosexual, but that they are wanting to have sexual relations with angels, which is it's wild. But if we really think about the wickedness of humanity, that their hearts are what verse 5 says, then it shouldn't surprise us. Like, that's the depths of depravity of people, is that if an interdimensional being promises them long life or wisdom, or you'll be one with the universe, or whatever, come have sex with me. Right. Absolutely, people would.
Oh yeah, they would. Yeah. I mean,
no doubt in my mind.
Imagine that Aphrodite appears.
Right.
She's beautiful and glorious. There's men would be like getting in line.
Right.
Like women already, they'll have the idols of people. Right. There was a little article I think I saw yesterday where a man's divorcing his wife because she was seduced on stage by Usher at a concert. He brought her up on stage, was singing to her, whatever. I guess she kissed him.
Okay.
On stage in front of everybody.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "My wife won't even kiss me in public."
Oh, man.
And so he's like, "I'm divorcing you.
Wow.
You got seduced on stage in front of millions of people."
Right.
So, yes, we're wicked.
Yeah, the point of verse 5 is, don't be surprised by the wickedness of people, because every intention of the thoughts of their heart is evil only continually. And yeah, if you're looking at chapter 6 and you're thinking, well, it couldn't possibly be women having children with angels, but read verse 5 and really meditate on it. People are wicked. And that's not just everyone out there. That's the state of every human heart.
I think anybody that's been to the Middle East understands this, huh? You don't want to know the things that those men do in the Middle East.
Yeah.
From pedophilia to bestiality to all kinds of things.
Well, I mean, we talked about cannibalism. That's not something that has gone away. I mean, there's tribes that still live out in the jungle, and yeah, it's all kinds of wicked stuff. And demon worship. I mean, all the paganism is just worshiping demons.
Yeah. All right, so the second indisputable truth is that sin
That
demands...
only took us an hour, Jay.
These won't take us as long. I don't think these will take as long. Sin demands a divine response,
right?
And we're going to see that ultimate response coming in the form of a flood,
yes.
a worldwide cataclysm.
Yeah.
Which I think is unimaginably worse than anything we can even picture in our mind. But there is another disputed element here where God says his spirit will not remain with man forever. And then their number of their days is going to be 120 years.
Right.
So unravel that for us.
Well, my spirit, spirit in Hebrew is spirit or breath or wind. The one word plays triple duty, right? And we've seen this already in Genesis. The Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters in Genesis chapter 1. God breathed the breath of life into Adam in chapter 2. And so the question is, what's he talking about? My spirit will not, and the word abide could mean strive. So like fighting. My spirit will not fight with man forever. Or my spirit will not abide with man forever, or my breath will not abide with man forever. And so it's difficult to know exactly what's going on here. I think the clearest thought is that man is, and again we're going back to the sons of God. It seems like they're wanting to live forever. They want their lives to be long. And God is saying that my breath is not going to abide in them forever. And he shortens their days. So in an attempt to live long, long lives, God actually judges them in not just the flood, but also by shortening their days.
Yeah.
That seems like what's going on. But 120 years, it has been interpreted in two different ways. And I swing back and forth. I don't know. One is that it's just shortening the days. The other is that it's a countdown to the flood.
Yeah.
And both of those fit in the context. The criticism of the shortening of days is that after the flood, there's still people that are living a lot longer than 120 years.
Right.
Noah lives a lot longer than 120 years. But there is a gradual decrease in how long that they live. And then when Moses dies at the end of Deuteronomy, he dies at the age of 120.
Yeah.
So it could be that. But God patiently waits in the days of Noah before the flood, as Peter tells us in 1 Peter chapter 3. 120 years could be a countdown. I don't know.
Yeah. Don't know. But what is clear is that God judges sin.
I didn't mention this. Did I mention this last week? That Jared's name means descend, and it's thought that it was in the days of Jared that the sons of God.
You did. I know you did in the sermon. I can't remember if we did on the podcast.
Yeah. It's thought, again, we don't know for sure, that the sons of God came down in the days of Jared. So Enoch is alive during Genesis 6. And he plays the pivotal role in the book of First Enoch, as he's witnessing this and also prophesying against both the angels and man's wickedness.
Right.
So
yeah. But what we see is that God is a good God, and sin demands that he act.
Right.
And he does, and he acts.
Yeah. Verses 6 and 7, Yahweh regretted he'd made man, and he says he's going to blot them out. Yeah. And we have the difficulty. Yahweh regrets, he's grieved, and he's sorry.
Right.
And that can be difficult for people to to understand, because if you just take it, if you take regret in the way that we use regret, then you've got God realizing he's
made a mistake.
He's made a mistake, or things haven't turned out the way that he wanted them to.
He hoped.
Yeah, hoped.
Yeah,
right.
What does God hope in?
Yeah, right.
It sets up a number of problems.
Yeah, it sets up the problem of he doesn't know the future,
Mm-hmm.
that he can change, that he can learn. And none of those things are true.
Right.
God does not change. The Bible is crystal clear on this. There are multiple passages where God explicitly says he does not change.
Right.
He doesn't learn.
Right.
Which plays into these verses. He doesn't look down at earth and learn what mankind is doing and then be sorry over it. He also doesn't have passions. And so when we think of him being grieved, we can't think of it in the way that we're grieved. We're grieved by things that are unexpected, and our grief will carry us away. The word passion has the sense of being passive. We're passive in the presence of our emotions. Our emotions often actively control us.
Right.
God doesn't have passions. He is not passively ruled by emotions.
Yeah.
He's not carried away by them.
He's not acted upon.
Yes. Yeah. And so with those things that the Bible very clearly teaches, we can then look at these verses and say, God does not, he's not surprised by what's going on. He doesn't learn about it. And he's not changing his purposes. He's not changing his intentions. And when he says he's sorry that he made them, it's not this emotion that has got the best of him. What is going on is that mankind's sin is real, and God's response is real. He's not piece of wood laying on the ground. He's not a stone. He has, I don't know. Do we even want to say emotions? I don't know. We got to be really careful. He does feel. He is love. That's not just a word with no meaning behind it.
Yeah.
He expresses anger. That there is something behind that. It's not just an empty word that is devoid of heart. But it's not in the same way as us.
Right.
He is different than us, but he does respond to sin.
Well,
with
the Bible clearly says things that to us, the problem is we presume upon God that he is like us. He even will chastise the Israelites for doing that very thing.
Right.
The Bible very clearly says in several places that God doesn't just hate sin, he hates sinners.
Right.
And that is unthinkable for people in America to hear.
Right.
But the Bible also affirms very clearly that God loves sinners to an unimaginable degree.
Right.
We cannot do both things.
Right.
But because God doesn't change, his disposition doesn't change.
Yeah.
In that, because he is perfectly holy and just, he must hate that which is not.
He remains stationary. We're the ones who change.
Yeah.
And depending on
where we
how
change.
we're changing, how we relate to God, we will experience God in different ways.
Yes. That's good. Yeah. Our perspective is constantly changing. God's is not changing.
It's like the sun. It's like the sun and the planets. The sun stays in one place. It's not moving. Our planet is moving constantly, and it's changing. And even over the weekend, it's April, it's spring, but we got snow, right? But the sun hasn't changed. The sun is right where it always is. But the Earth is rotating. It's moving on its axis. We get hot in the summer. We get cold in the winter because we're changing. But the sun is not doing anything. God is not. He's not changing. He's not moving. But we're moving. We're changing, and we experience God in different ways based on that.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about God's attributes, even, we're doing that because that's the only way we can understand God.
Right. We have to.
We have to take him
Yes.
and view his parts, but he doesn't have parts.
We have to think in categories.
Right.
And so we slice up attributes
Mhm.
into little packets
Right.
that we can study
Yeah.
and understand.
Right.
So you've already talked about that God can't learn. He's omniscient.
Yeah.
There's a packet. Well, he's also all powerful. There's another packet. Let's study that.
Right.
But he's not a composite. He's not built up
Right.
by putting those pieces together and then getting at God.
Right.
He's all of those things, always, eternally, all the time,
Yeah.
perfectly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That again reminds us of who God is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is infinitely different than us,
Right.
which also highlights the next point.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But he does have to respond to the wickedness of humanity, and humanity is evil only,
Mm-hmm.
just continually evil, and God is not going to. He loves his glory too much to see the image of him just destroy the earth,
Mm-hmm.
and just live in wicked rebellion without any consequences. He's not the deist God that
Right.
just stands back and just watches.
Right.
He's not just an observer.
Uh-huh.
He acts upon the world. And because of their wickedness, God is going to blot them out.
Mm-hmm.
And that word means to erase from memory. He's going to annihilate them.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's on the earth, he's going to just get rid of all of it. And they deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely deserve it. These Nephilim, who are the men of name, their name is going to be completely erased. And I think there's a reason why we don't know a lot about them. We don't know who they are. I mean, there's debate over who they are because God blotted them out.
Mm.
Their record didn't outlast them.
Right.
They're gone.
Yeah. So that brings us then to our third and final point. This is an indisputable truth from a disputed passage that sovereign grace is your only hope. Sovereign grace is your only hope. And so we get this glimmer of it with the mention of Noah.
Yep.
Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
Yep.
The natural man, I think, reads this passage as, in a world of wicked and evil men, there was one good man
Right.
who did good,
Yes.
and his doing good earned him a ticket
Right.
on the boat.
Yeah.
But that is not at all
No.
what this passage means.
No. And I mentioned that out of all the verses that we looked at in chapter 6, this one's the only one that doesn't have any grammatical problems. There's nothing debatable. However, if you think that Noah is earning God's grace, and you can too, or you have to, then this is going to be the most difficult of all the verses because it's impossible. It's an impossibility to earn God's favor.
Mm-hmm.
Noah does not earn his favor. He finds favor in the eyes of Yahweh.
Or he finds grace.
Or grace. Yeah, that's the word. It's grace. Yeah. Now, when we get back into Genesis, in a month and a half or so, we're going to talk about Noah's faith and his righteousness, because we do see that he's a righteous man. He is blameless in his generations, which is it kind of staggers the mind. If there's billions of people and there's only one righteous person in the entire world, that's mind-boggling. But it's not because of something that Noah has done. It's because of something God has done for Noah. Because God is keeping his promise of Genesis 3:15. And he's not going to let the wickedness of humanity and the wickedness of angels foil his purposes. The seed of the woman is going to come, and so God, by his grace, is going to preserve a line. He's going to preserve a seed, and it's Noah. Why is it Noah? I mean, Lamech has other sons and daughters. Why is it Noah? Well, it's because God sovereignly chooses him to show grace on him. And Noah's life is a reflection of that sovereign grace. We have to get the order right. Noah doesn't find grace because he is righteous. He's righteous because God shows him grace. Because Noah's a sinner. We're going to see that in chapter 9. It'll be very clear in chapter 9 that Noah is a sinner. He dies, which is a good indication, right? There's our clue that he is a sinner, is that he dies. But God shows him grace. Out of all the however many people there are on the earth, he shows Noah grace. And Noah deserves to be swept away also. But God does something for Noah that Noah could never do for himself. Because God didn't have to warn Noah. God could have started all over again. He could have wiped everyone out and just started over again, but he doesn't. And we should recognize the grace that's found in that. And it just follows we're following it from Genesis 3, where God shows grace to Adam and Eve. He shows grace to Cain, even though Cain rejects that grace. He still shows him grace. He shows grace to Seth, and he shows grace to Enoch, and he shows grace to Noah. And that's the theme. And so just as God warns Noah of coming judgment, he warns us that judgment is coming. And just as God gives to Noah a way of escape in an ark, God also has provided something even greater for us in Christ. And if people would turn from their sin and trust in Christ, don't try to earn favor with God, don't try to work your way towards God, simply acknowledge that you're a sinner, that you are in a helpless condition, that judgment is coming, and you can't do anything to escape it unless God does something for you. If you'll do that, then you'll find that Christ is a perfect Savior who will save anybody who will come to him. And that's what we see here with Noah. We're going to see it even more as we continue through the flood story.
All right, very good. And that's a perfect place to end on Christ.
All right. Thanks
for the combo. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope this has been helpful and beneficial to you. We had fun with this episode. Despite all of these disputable things we see, the things we can argue about, these truths remain to be true. All right, man is evil and wicked, and that demands a response from God. God always judges sin. But there is a way of escape, and in Christ we find a greater ark of our salvation, and our hope is in Him. So if this has been helpful, please give us a like, subscribe, and share, and come back and tune in next week as we jump back into Romans chapter 6. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.